Hello, in this video we're going to talk about refurbishing your paper feed section of your Riso. This particular model is a RP3700. The variations are numerous, however they tend to be somewhat similar. So if you look at this video, it's very applicable to most of the other versions. What we're going to do is replace 3 feed tires and the paper feed clutch, also known as the PF clutch, and finally the stripper pad. What I'm going to do is remove the assembly from the machine so it's more visible to see. It's very difficult to see what's going on in the video without actually taking the parts out and putting them on the workbench. But it's not necessary to remove them and take them to the workbench to get the job done. So we have the feed tires and the paper feed clutch. The paper feed clutch is located near the back of the machine, down at the end of this rod shaft here, about an inch outboard of that. Your feed tires are located up here in this stripper assembly, and then your stripper pad is right in here. And this is another part that's very critical to replace on a regular basis, at least every 500,000 copies. You can't replace it too often, and it's a fairly inexpensive part to replace and very easy. That just pops off from the top. And we'll take this on the workbench and take a look at it. Some of these vary. Some have latching mechanisms over here where you push it down to unlatch it. Others have a little push lever here that you can push it to get it to drop out. Now, before you start anything, ever working on your Riso, read through your manual, look at your safety precautions, and by all means, remove all power from the machine. So we're going to start by turning the machine off. We'll disconnect the power cord. Okay, to speed up the video, I've removed some of the screws already on the back panel. We're looking at the back cover of an RP3700 here. Taking out the screw here, the top right screw, bottom right screw, and then the screw on the bottom left. Then you'll want to come open up the clamshell, and this will allow you to remove the cover off the back. You simply pull out on it a little, and it works its way loose. Same thing on the other side. You'll want to get it around some of the components over here. Pop right out. That exposes your back and all your electronics, which at first looks intimidating, but it's fairly simple. And the part we're trying to get to eventually is the paper feed clutch, which is located behind this board here. And that board is held on. All it is a door, and it's held on by some screws. The screws are attached here, one here, third one here, and the fourth one here. So you'll want to open up that door. It's on some hinges on the right-hand side. In order to do that, you need to disconnect this wiring harness here. So gently grab it, give it a little tug, disconnect that, put that to the side, and also this purple connector here. So disconnect that one. And that'll allow you to open this up and gives you access to paper feed clutch, which happens to be right about here. I've already disconnected the wiring harness from it. It just comes unplugged. It's simply a little purple connector. And it's connected up to a little tab in here that keeps it from rotating. That tab is important when you put it back and reinstall it, that you have this little metal tab in between the fork of the paper feed clutch, which I'll explain in a few more moments. Here's the E-clip that holds the clutch on. If you wanted to take it out right now in this position, you'd simply pop this E-clip out with a straight edge screwdriver and then take off your connector, and then this slides right out and is ready for replacement. Now we'll go to the bench so we can see these things a little more easily. Alright, here we are on the bench with the assembly for the paper feed section pulled from the RP3700. It's much easier to look at when we're working on it. You do not need to pull it from the machine in order to change the components. It's actually much easier to leave it in the machine. It's just a lot easier to video when we do this. So there's a couple of variations on the where the stripper assembly is. One has a latch here, this little latch, knurled latch. You pull this down, and then you reach up and you push down on the stripper pad, rock it out, and that'll give you access to the stripper pad. One of the earlier versions of it didn't have that latch on it. It's no problem. Same idea as you push down, pull out. And then there's another version which has a green lever on the outside, which makes it extremely convenient. All you do is push the lever and it pops itself out, and then you pull it the remainder of the way out. So the first and simple thing we'll do is we'll replace the stripper pad. This one's is worn. It's got a little concave indentation to it. It's had quite a few copies run through it, but it's about time to change. So this metal guard is very important that it be tight against the stripper pad. If it's bent up, it'll tend to cause jams. It slides off in one direction and one direction only. It slides off to the left. So we slide that off. Put that to the side. And you peel off your old stripper pad. All it is has some adhesive on it. So that peels off. Clean that up a little bit. Get that old adhesive off there. Get rid of the old stripper pad. We've got the new stripper pad here. We're going to peel the adhesive guard off. Discard that. We'll apply the new stripper pad. Get it nice and squared up in there. Then we want to slide this back on. Now if it's loose, which it usually isn't, but if it happens to be a little loose going on, you simply form this down. It's a spring metal, so you form it down to make it nice and tight against the stripper pad. And quite often if you have a bad jam, this can get bent backwards, and that can cause repeated jam problems. So, easy fix. We're going to slide this back on. It's nice and tight. And then we can reapply it to the assembly. It has a hole here. That hole matches up with this nub here. Simply snap that on. And you have your stripper pad assembly. It's one of the very easy repairs. Always nice to keep a spare one around. The only two tools you need for this whole procedure is a small Phillips head screwdriver, or medium size, and small or medium size straight edge screwdriver. Everything else is fairly straightforward. To get the rollers off, there's these C-clips on each side. All they have is these black plastic tabs. This is looking out from the bottom. And they hold the shaft in place. Pop these off on each side. And that'll allow you to pull out the bronze bushings that are on the ends. The bronze bushing here has a flat spot. Make a note of that flat spot. That goes in a certain position, which I'll show you in a moment. The left ones sometimes tend to be a little stubborn, but this one's pretty easy today. But if for some reason it was stubborn, just simply stick a screwdriver in there and just give it a gentle nudge to pop it out. Take that out. And this whole assembly will fall out. There's a shim in here. Remember, this shim goes between the roller and this metal bracket. It does not go on the outside of the bracket. It reduces the friction inside the bracket. So that's going to go inside the bracket. To replace the tires, this is a one-way clutch assembly. It's called a sprayed clutch. It only rotates freely in the direction that will let the paper go in. So if it happens to be rotating in both directions, that would be time to replace it. But this one's nice and tight. So easy to replace. Simply purchase a new assembly here, slide it on and slide it off, and you're good to go. To replace the tires, simply pop off like little model car tires, like this. Pop that off. Pop your other one off. And then you're ready to put your new tires on. Pop some new tires on. Very quick and easy. Back in place. The other one, which is the longer shaft version, there are shorter shaft versions which are actually easier. I've got the most complicated one just to show you. It has a very long shaft that holds this one clutch type feed tire that has a metal hub in it and a sprayed clutch in it. The difference between this one is it has the hub built in. So what you do is you come off to this far side, pop off the C-clip on the end. That allows you to move this, push the shaft this way. That will disengage it with the rest of the assembly on the left. Then you're free to disassemble everything, which is the same as the others. Two C-clips, pop those two off. Very easy. Same thing with the bronze bushings. Sometimes they're cooperative, sometimes they aren't, but usually they're pretty good on the back side here. Those come out, and the same thing. Once those come out, it's pretty easy to pull this whole assembly out. Take your bronze bushing off the end. Take the other bronze bushing, making note that the piloted side, the smaller diameter side, is towards the inside. Pull that off. Then there's a spacer sleeve. That spacer sleeve goes inside of the hub. The other side is flush. So if you don't, this must go inside the hub. That tells you the orientation because this rotates in one direction only. It rotates freely in the direction that the paper will flow, but it will lock up in the opposite direction. So that comes off, and that's replaced with a new fresh one. Easy. If you want, you can clean this up. This one's fairly clean already, so we're just going to reassemble it because I already cleaned it. So, reassemble there. Put your spacer in place. Let's see now. We'll put the. Oh, there's one part I wanted to make note of here. Was take a look at the flat spots of where these bushings go. They're near the top of the bracket. And this is the flat spot. So there's only one way this can go in. And as you're playing with it, you kind of can't see it when you're working on it, so you just rotate it until the flat's near the top and then it falls right in place. So we're going to stick this back in. side here with the gear, the gray gear meshing up with the white gear. Slide the bushing in place, getting the flat spot near the top until it engages. Then you want to get this other bushing in place with the flat spot near the top until it engages there. And we're going to snap our C-clip in here. Snap the C-clip in here. Oops. So, okay. Then put the other bushing in here, like this. And you put this in the side of the machine. There's a hole where this goes. Line this flat up until it gets in place, and then you're going to put the C-clip in place to hold it. But you must make sure that you align this shear pin on the end. It needs to be aligned with this shaft here. You just rotate it until it falls in to location. I don't know if you can see that or not. You just got to rotate until it gets into place. And that's your drive mechanism. So rotate it until it's in place. After it's in place, then come to your right side, or the front side of the machine, get the bushing in alignment, and then put your C-clip back in place to hold it into position. And you're set with that part. Okay. Now for the other two feed tires that have been replaced, those, remember this shim here, if I can get that off the table, that has to go inside the bracket here. This all drops in place, or in the case of what you're going to be doing is you'll be pushing it up. And we want these with the flats to go up. Put them on the shaft, rotate them into position. One on. Put the C-clip in place. And we'll do the same thing with the other bronze bushing. Flat towards the top. It's a lot easier if you start with the flat towards the top. It just sort of drops right in place. It looks real easy on the bench, but sometimes it can be a little frustrating. So there we are. We're reassembled. Our gears are all meshing properly. And we are ready to proceed with the next part. The other critical part to the machine, which is located inside, is the paper feed clutch. And this is the part where we opened up the back electronic board, hinged that open, and you had this feed clutch in there. This controls the tension at which the paper is pulled into the duplicator. All that holds that in place is this one simple E-clip. That's all that holds it on. It's a very easy change. And there's a little connector here. Just simply unplug that connector. This little forked tab here goes into a metal tab that's located roughly in the 10 o'clock position. You can see it and you can feel it. And when you're sliding this on, just sort of slide it into that piece there. And you put that E-clip right back on there. So you can do whatever way you prefer working with the E-clips. I just simply get a screwdriver and push them in place. Now the hard part sometimes is taking the E-clip off. It's taking the E-clip off. So sometimes you'll want to rotate it until it gets to the flat so that you'll have some air gap in there to get your screwdriver in there, and just push that down, pop that out. You pop that out, take your old clutch assembly off, and reinstall your clutch assembly, put your E-clip back on. These are made with a heavy iron content, so they tend to rust. The plates that touch will rust, and that rust will cause you problems and cause variations in how hard it pulls the paper. So if you're in a high humidity environment, if your shop's near a door or something where you might have a lot of humidity, these won't last as long. But if you're in a nicely air-conditioned, dehumidified environment, they might last 1 million copies. Again, this is one of those things that goes bad right during the middle of the important print job. So I tend to keep one of these as a spare, always. Always tend to keep a set of tires as spares around the machine, and most importantly, keep a stripper pad as a spare around the machine. So that's that. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. Or if you need any other components, feel free to contact Print Now. We're located at printnow.com, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you.